All right. And we are live, I believe. Yes. Somebody throw something in the chat just to make sure everything is right and working. Looking extra orangey today with this light, right? We're good, guys. Yep. I will take that as a yes. Yeah. So, welcome to my little preview live chat here. I'm hearing my own voice now. Hold on a second. All right, there we go. All right. Yeah, so this is my UFC 242 preview. And yeah, I'm doing a live chat. Basically, if you're new to this, the way it works is I first give you my thoughts on the card, obviously UFC 242, and then at the very end, I'll take some questions. So this time around, we did things a little bit more differently, just to get things queued in, before and not always live. So I asked if you guys, if you wanted, you could send tweets. You could send your questions via Twitter, replying to basically the post of me announcing this very own preview show. So yeah, I'll take those first, and then I'll go to the chat as I usually do, and then just go down chronologically and take those questions. Obviously, I rather have the questions surrounding UFC 242, but also anything goes. So keep that in mind. All right, so let's talk about UFC 242. Right, this is what you came here for. This is why I'm here. So let's do this. Pretty interesting card. It has gotten a lot of hate online. We're coming off UFC Shenyang over in China, and that got a lot of heat because it was the title fight. The main event was really good, and it was free, so you got to give it some slack. But it was really good. But other than that, that card was not so great as far as main event down, right? Uh, this one, I feel like a lot of people are comparing it, obviously, to a different degree. The main event is a lightweight title fight, with one of the biggest stars in the game, Khabib Nurmagomedov, right? So it's obviously a little different. Um, and also, you got a pretty solid co-main event here, and a few other good fights as well. But nonetheless, it's very top heavy. That we can all agree on. But nonetheless, I do think it's still a pretty good card. I think it's a card that has a lot of good matchups that I'm looking forward to seeing. A lot of good matchups, not only some good fights, but good matchups that promise some good and interesting action. But what I would agree on, so I disagree with a lot of people in that respect. I think this card is good. But what I do agree on is that one is top heavy, and one of the biggest things, one of my biggest issues with this card overall is that it doesn't have that much at stake. So, for example, Edson Barboza versus Paul Felder rematch, fantastic fight. I am so down to see it. The first one was super entertaining. Both guys have had a bunch of entertaining fights since they fought. This just leads me to believe that this will also be a very entertaining fight. So I'm all for it. Don't get me wrong. But it's pretty obvious that the winner here is not going to be a lot closer to that title that's going to be, contested in the main event. I mean, there's like 4 or 5 guys that will be in front of whoever the winner is here. Same goes for a lot of matchups. So I think that's the biggest thing for me. If you go down to like other pay-per-views, say like I don't know, UFC, 241, 239, where like you got, for example, the last pay-per-view card, you had Romero Costa, where like, okay, yeah, that's a really good fight. But on top of that, like, Jesus, what could happen next? I mean, especially if Costa wins, which he did, who is he going to challenge, right? Is he going to fight for the title? Very likely, right? Same thing with Romero, even though he's already fought for the title, but still, all of a sudden your brain starts ticking, and because there's something on the line. And the same thing with a few other matchups. Nate Diaz return against Showtime Perez. Whoever wins that will probably take a big money fight or a title fight. You don't know. But here, you don't get that sense. So yes, there are good matchups, but there's not a whole lot at stake. So that is my only complaint with this card. But other than that, we have a really, really good main event in Nurmagomedov versus Dustin Poirier, and we have a bunch of good matchups that are interesting and should be fun. And also, this card is early in the morning, which if you saw my last preview show, I always appreciate those type of cards, just to change things up. I think being a fan, you get to pick and choose what cards you want to watch. Obviously, me working for MMAfighting.com and MMA media, you have to watch them all. And don't get me wrong, I love MMA, so this is a dream job. But it's nice having your Saturday night off, so that'll be nice. So yeah, overall, I really like this card, and it should be a fun one. Also, it's in Abu Dhabi, and um, I don't know, that should be interesting. I believe this is the third event that the UFC has hosted there. And it's going to be interesting. The crowd is going to be different. The feel should be a little different. So yeah, let's see how that looks. So let's talk about the main event. That's really the biggest talking point here. And most of the questions that I got on Twitter, and I'm sure that I will be getting on this chat, which let me pop up here on my other screen so I can have it available to read your questions. There we go. Um, yeah, most of the questions were surrounding that, and obviously this fight has huge implications, right? The winner here, I mean, a lot is riding on the line here. Not only the winner here will be the man at that weight class, which is one of the best weight classes in the company, but also, there's Conor McGregor looming, right? There's Tony Ferguson looming. So whatever the future holds is still very exciting. Depending on the option, is going to be more exciting, for some people than others, right? Depending on how the UFC goes about this. But nonetheless, interesting stuff here for either guy, right? Whoever ends up winning this. So Khabib Nurmagomedov, super dominant. Nobody has ever beat him. A lot of people are wondering if Dustin Poirier can be that guy, right? And I'm getting the sense that people do believe that Dustin Poirier can pull off the upset more than anybody I've seen, more than any opponent that has gone against Khabib. At least that's the feeling I'm getting. I don't know if you guys are too. Um, and I kind of agree with it. I really do. And again, it could be you know uh, group thinking, right? It could be that mentality. It could be a bunch of different things that could be influencing that, right? Um, but I think there's some interesting things we can look at here. So I also just want to say this, for the record, I actually thought, Conor McGregor had a good chance. Hindsight, I think that was a very poor decision of mine. Um, but now that I know that, looking at this matchup, I have some things to back up my thoughts. Why Dustin Poirier is a very live dog here. Number one, most people are worrying about the takedown defense, right? Like, oh, is the takedown defense good enough, right? I think that's somewhat irrelevant. I think it matters, but I think when you're facing Khabib, you're gonna get taken down. Period. I mean, it's not about if you are gonna get taken down. The biggest factor is a few things, which is one of the reasons why I also believe Tony Ferguson is an amazing matchup for Habib as far as like competition wise. Either you got to be a monster on your back and have like disgusting elbows, like Tony Ferguson does, like be able to do damage on your back, whether it's with strikes, with elbows, right, or a huge threat of the submission, right? Because you are going to be on your back. That's just a fact every time you face Habib. Now, the other aspect of that is one, you got to have cardio because that dude's going to be mauling you and he's going to be working at all times. So you got to be cardio, and cardio is usually paired with toughness, right? If you can tough your way through things even if you're tired, right? So that's another thing. You got to be tough as shit. You can't be someone that gives in when the going gets tough, right? That just gives up. You just that's not going to be the case because Habib will test your toughness, will test your cardio, will test your patience, getting losing round after round, being frustrated of having this guy on top of you just destroying you, right? I think the way to beat Habib is either a Tony Ferguson type, or I think Dustin Poirier fits a type that can offer several problems, meaning he's tough as shit. He's got, decent cardio, um, knockout power. He swings, right? He's not gun shy. And, on the ground, he's not bad. He's pretty good. Actually, in the very beginning of his UFC career, the guy had, plenty of submissions. That has gone away. I feel like he's more of a striker now than a grappler. But even though you can lose some sort of skill, you're never going to lose it all. Exactly. There's still something in your brain, some muscle memory. I mean, I can speak from experience. I haven't done jujitsu in forever, but I can step on the mat and I can grapple. I might not be as good as I used to, right? But certainly I know things. So yes, that's why I think Dustin poses an interesting challenge to Habib. Nonetheless, I think Habib is the favorite, probably by a lot, and I think that's fair. But I don't think it'd be fair to discount Dustin Poirier at all in this matchup. Um, there's also a few other interesting things happening apart from the main event. Edson Barboza, Paul Felder. Not much of a storyline here. Besides, I'm curious to see how Paul Felder looks like in this fight because it's pretty clear that Edson Barboza was elite back then, and he's still elite. Like he hasn't had much of a drop off, right? And yes, I'm sure he's gotten better. He switched camps as well, which that's usually a sign that you are learning new things from different sources, right? So I am sure, I know that Edson Barboza has gotten better, but nonetheless, when he fought Paul Felder, he was already Edson Barboza. He was already somewhat of a complete product. Whereas Paul Felder was only like what 10-0 in his career, had never lost, very new to the UFC, and since he's really come into his own and matured. So that's the biggest thing for me in that matchup. I know what Edson brings. Obviously, I know what Paul Felder brings, but I want to see the difference now because I also don't think Barbosa has had some sort of drop off. So however Paul Felder looks in this fight is going to be very telling of his evolution in the sport and his game. So I'm looking forward to that. And then one more fight that I want to quickly highlight, and then if you guys want to get to other fights, then I'll take those in the questions, so you can throw that on the chat. It's Islam Makhachev versus David Ramos. That is a really really good fight, probably a sleeper one. I don't think many people are talking about it. So Islam Makhachev is a pretty bright prospect. Let's see, how old is he? He's pretty young. He must be like 27. Yep, 27. He's a 90s baby, 1991. Um, yeah, and he's fighting David Ramos, ADCC champion, obviously, a fantastic grappler. He really came into the UFC with a lot of heat, with a lot of hype, because he got this crazy armbar finish at ADCC. It was like a flying armbar, and it wasn't flying like in the sense of these two guys standing. The guy was, doing the butt scoot, right? The infamous butt scoot, and he got flying armbar there. So he was already on the ground, which that's ridiculous. So I'm actually really curious to see how jiu-jitsu versus sambo works, because there's a big it's pretty clear that jiu-jitsu is probably one of the most important martial arts for MMA, right? But I really do think that sambo is just right there. I mean, sambo, you got the submissions, you got the throws, right? There's a lot of things involved in it, and I think they even do some striking in some yeah, in some situations, right? So yeah, I'm curious to see, two guys that have a very specific craft go at it and see how that looks. So that's really what I'm looking forward to in this card. There's obviously some other good fights. I think the Curtis Blades, Shamil Abdurak, there's going to be a lot of names I don't know how to pronounce in this card. That's going to be a good fight. Is actually one of the very few times you get to see heavyweight wrestling, because both guys are wrestlers. That's really what they do. They do other things as well, but that's what they're really really good at. For the most part in heavyweight, you get either two strikers or a striker and a wrestler, and that's usually how the storyline goes. Rarely you ever see two known wrestlers go at it. So that should be a fun one. So yeah, those are pretty much my overall thoughts. Now I'm gonna take questions. Obviously, as I promised, I'll take the Twitter ones first. Let me take a quick water break here. So I got a few. So I'll try to get these. Get through these as quick as I can, so I can get to the chat. So, Pat the D asks, "Hi Danny, got a question from Quebec, Canada. Do you think Khabib will be more focused on his game plan, wrestling slash mauling, than usual with his? I'm guessing the H on your keyboard was messed up. Then his u- then his wait than usual with his father in the corner, because almost half of his fight is the corner yell at him to stick to the game plan. Yeah, so that's going to be interesting, the dynamic there. So Habib's father is like such a big influence in his camp, in his fighting, and we've never really seen him all that much, because I believe he has some issues with his visa where he can't get into the U.S. So now that, and look, Habib, I believe most of his fights, if not all, have been in the U.S. Let me see. Ta, 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 ta. Yeah, I mean, he fought in Canada at UFC 165. That was a while ago. Brazil as well, beating Thiago Tavares in 2013. But yeah, we haven't seen him fight, outside of the US in a bit. So that's going to be a game changer for him. Khabib is such a focused guy. Like when he fought Conor McGregor, dude, there was so much heat in there, and towards the end, you could see that he kind of translate, but nonetheless, that was a very Khabib performance. Like the dude didn't fight emotional. The dude didn't do anything differently because of an emotion. So obviously this is a different emotion. It's not hate towards somebody, but rather than having the support of his father there. But I would guess it's gonna be um classic Khabib. I don't think that'll change his game plan at all. So no, I don't think it'll make much of a difference, besides him just being, I guess, happier throughout fight week, and being happy that his father's there to watch him live. All right. Bob Tap asks, this is on Twitter, by the way, what is the best fight on the card outside of the main and co-main events? As I said, one fight I'm really, really, really looking forward to is that Islam Makhachev versus Davi Ramos fight. It's gonna be amazing. I mean, obviously it can be boring. You never know, but it has a lot of promise. Also, these guys are very young. Like I said, Makhachev is what 27. I said, and Ramos 32. But definitely young in the MMA game. And I think MMA years count a lot, right? He's not your regular 32-year-old that's been fighting for like 15 years. No, this dude's been fighting, since 2010. So you know, well, he fought in 2010. He didn't fight again until 2013. So, he kind of went back and forth, didn't fight at all in 2015 as well. So, yeah, still a very young guy in MMA as far as MMA goes. Young dude. So I would consider him a prospect. So, yeah, that fight's really good. Also, Jojo Calderwood versus Andrea Lee. I mentioned at the top that one of the issues with this card is there's not a whole lot at stake. Besides what's happening in the main event. I think this is one of the few exceptions on that card. I think Caitlin Shukagan is currently ranked number 2 at women's flyweight. Number 1 somehow is still Jessica I. There goes the UFC rankings for you. I mean, how are you number 1 contender if you just lost to the champion, right? You should get bumped down. There should be a rule. Like, there should be a rule in the UFC rankings where, like, you're number 1 contender, you lose to the champion, you gotta at least get removed from the top 5. I would support maybe even top 10, or if you want to draw it right in the middle, like top 6 or 7. But you just lost to a champion. There are other guys in line, or ladies. Um, yeah, you don't deserve to be number 1 contender. And this is not nothing against just Guy. This is just anybody, right? This goes to anyone. Um, so yeah, I think right after that is Caitlin Shukagan, and then Calderwood and Andrea Lee I feel like they're right there. Let me check the rankings real quick. Women's flyweight. Yeah, so it's Shukagan, Liz Carmouche, who is ranked 3rd and recently lost as well. Jennifer Maya, Calderwood at 5 and 6 at Andrea Lee. So potentially, depending on how the UFC wants to go about things, we also know that they have a busy schedule, and title shots not often depend on who's number 1, but also on availability, on location, as we saw with Andrade and Weili Zhang. So yeah, you could potentially see the next title contender, depending on how the fight goes and who wins. The next title contender at flyweight, women's flyweight, could very well be defined in that fight. So I think that's interesting. And it should be a fun fight as well. Two good strikers. So that's a fight I'm looking forward to as well. Let's see. Yeah, there are a few other fights that are pretty good there as well. But I would say that one, outside of the Islam Makhachev and Davi Ramos, obviously, as the tweet said, not counting main and co-main event. All right. Let's see what else is on Twitter. What day and time will the official weigh-ins be for UFC 242? So that's a good question. I believe they're at 3 a.m. Eastern time, something like that. So yeah, pretty late. This whole week, sort of like the work over, that I'm doing, since we have a team. Obviously, Esther Lynn, Pizza Carol, who's been killing it with the interviews, and Casey. Um, it's just been such a weird hours, like just working late at night or really early in the morning, or just waking up way earlier than usual. It's been interesting. But yeah, it's a big time change. I don't know who's gonna stay up till 3 a.m. to watch that. I got to be up at 7 for ceremonial weigh-ins. I'll be doing social for that. So I don't know if I'm going to stick around for the real weigh-ins, because I got to be up just 4 hours later. Or I might pull off all-nighter. I don't know. Because also, I think there's questions. I think some of the questions have gone away about Khabib making weight, but nonetheless, he's had a sketchy past before. Now he's made weight after his few incidents that you would assume that everything's okay, but nonetheless, you never know. It's not like a fighter that always makes, like a Demetrius Johnson that always made weight, right? Always made weight, so you can just rest easy. Like, you never know, right? So I guess a lot of people will be tuning into those. But yeah, 3 a.m. Eastern time, I believe, 9 a.m. local time in Abu Dhabi. So just do the conversion. I believe it's an 11-hour difference. So yeah, that's that. Let's see. The Executioner 91 asks, Dustin was controlled on the ground pretty easily by Eddie. Parentheses, granted, it was after attempting 2 guillotines. Parentheses again. But is this going to be less competitive than expected? Maybe. Maybe. I thought Conor McGregor had a shot, and we saw that turned out. I mean, that was a pretty dominant performance by Khabib. But then you look at Ali Quinta, and a lot of people thought he was going to get smoked. keeping in mind he didn't prepare for that fight. He was supposed to fight somebody else. I believe who's he supposed to fight? Maybe Michael Chiesa or something like that. And then just we know what happened. In the main event, uh, he took the fight on short notice, and then he was fighting one of the greatest fighters that we've seen today on essentially very very short notice. And there was also he had been dealing with injuries in the past, and it wasn't sort of like he wasn't in the best position to get a title shot, right? He also prepared for 3 rounds, and now he's fighting 5, etc. And he was one of the very few fighters that actually took, who did something against Khabib, had some relative success. And it kind of backs up my theory as to why I think Dustin Poirier would do well, is because a lot of it was being out, just being tough as shit, to be honest. Like, he had his boxing stance and he kept his jab hand, which you're usually supposed to keep up, right? I've been taking boxing classes, so I know a little bit. But he kept it real low and kept his stance real low just to defend any takedown attempt from Khabib, which it worked, right? But then his face was exposed, and Khabib boxed a lot. I mean, that was one of his performances that he was boxing a lot because Al was allowing him to do so, and Al was happily taking shots to the face, and his face was all busted up just to eliminate a little bit of the takedown threat and keep the fight on the feet, longer, therefore increasing his chances of maybe landing a hard shot and putting away Habib, rocking him, etc. But that's the kind of mentality you have to go in that fight with. Like, I'm gonna get messed up here. I'm gonna get beat up, and I'm gonna get beat up even if I get the win. So that's kind of, you got to be okay with that. And something that always stuck with me, there's always very few quotes here and there that fighters say. Besides, I'm not talking about like the 3 piece and the soda and my boss was hot and nothing like that, but like quotes like that are legit, like real, like where you're just like, whoa. Um, I was. It always stuck with me when Dustin Poirier was gonna fight. I believe it was Justin Gaethje, and he was like, "I know that I'm gonna leave a piece of myself in there." Like, he was well aware that he was gonna take damage, and his there would be consequences, like physical consequences because of that, and he was completely fine with it. Like, that's toughness. That's toughness. Like, he knew he wasn't gonna leave the same person after that fight, and that's a good mentality to have when you're fighting Khabib Nurmagomedov. So he's definitely got the mental edge. So yeah. The Execution 91 also asked another question, quite lengthy, but basically asking, why do less people talk about how much of a hypocrite Habib is? And then, mentions examples, knocks out Connor or knocks on Connor for, boxing Mayweather, and then calls out Mayweather, talks about respect. I was about to say, the Portuguese way. Talks about respect equals doesn't show up to media or respect any protocol. 3, collects money from dictators, criminals, etc. I'll address the last one with the dictators and criminals real quick. Get that right out of the way, just because to be honest, I don't have a whole lot of knowledge on the region. I mean, these are very, very complex situations, and I don't feel like you always have to have an opinion about everything. I think, some people that are, like in my position, that work in media and whatnot are always expected to have sort of an opinion on things. But like, I'm not going to give an uneducated opinion. I think that's irresponsible. Now, I think if you know all your stuff, you know, and then you give your opinion, whatever opinion that is, I think that's fair, even if you think my opinion is wrong or whatever. Nonetheless, it's educated. Obviously, it's not like I'm completely ignorant to the matter, but from what I've seen and what I've heard from experts, right, like Kareem Saddam's work. Kareem was on the MMA Hour back when I was the producer, and Luke was hosting it, and he talked about that extensively. And obviously, we've seen the pictures, we've seen all that, but a lot of it is believed that he is from the region, and when somebody that powerful and you are such a big sports figure invites you and invites you to his home and all this, it's hard to say no, especially given that guy's um he's got a sketchy background. He's a dictator. So like, a lot of it is believed that he does it to protect himself and his family, his friends, right? Like, you don't want to be at odds with someone like that. So again, this is just me from what I hear from people that are very knowledgeable about the situation. Um, so yeah, I don't want to cast any judgment on that. And if I were put in a situation like public perception versus my safety and my family's safety, you bet I'm gonna go with with my safety. So again, it could be other factors as well. I mean, they might actually be friends. I don't know. Again, I don't know. So that's all I got to say about that. The second point, talk about respect and doesn't show up to media day. I feel like those are two different talking points. When he says when Khabib addresses respect is more like respect his opponents, right? Like like I don't go trashing you. Like look at this. This is a perfect example. Look at the Poirier his build up with Poirier, right? Like it was a thing where, they've had tense moments, they look at each other, they know they're gonna fight each other, they're sizing each other up, but nonetheless, it's all in competition. Like they're not talking about each other's family, they're not insulting each other's religion. In fact, they're being quite careful about that. Especially Poirier, right, going all the way to Abu Dhabi. He's going into not precisely Khabib's land, but you get what I'm saying. Um, so yeah, I think that's what he means. And yeah, the not showing up to media day. I know Mike Chiappetta, I retweeted his tweet. He got a lot of heat on Twitter because he said basically something like, it's not professional and it's somewhat disrespectful that he doesn't show up to media day. Um, and and yeah, media outlets pay a lot of money to go there, and it's very, very far. It's an expensive trip, and that's really what you're expecting, right? He's a star here. You're expecting to get content from him, and then he doesn't show up. Well, I back up Mike there. I think Mike Chiappetta is on point there. I mean, this is very different, but because this event is really centered around Khabib. Like the UFC is going to Abu Dhabi because of Khabib, nobody else, right? Thus costing the media and everybody else that is taking time to go there and pay a lot of money, right? It's an expensive trip because of that, right? And then on top of that, it's not a heavy card. Let's say like, because another perfect example is like, oh, then why are people okay with like Nate Diaz not doing media day? Well, you still had freaking the UFC heavyweight champion to interview, Daniel Cormier, Stipe Miocic, uh, Anthony Pettis, Yo Romero. I mean, the list goes on. That card was stacked, as we mentioned earlier in this chat. This card is not like Habib is the guy. Like he's carrying this card. Obviously Dustin as well. He has some pull as well, but really the star here is Habib. So when he's not available, that's a big hit. It's not like there's other, very compelling figures and stuff like that that you can interview and that'll do well, right? Or as well as Habib. So yeah, I do get his point, man, and I back it up. But again, Habib is at a point where he is a star, man, and once you start doing things like this is why sometimes the UFC is very controllative and people hate on them, but they do it for a reason, right? If you let Nate Diaz skip media day, Habib that holds a title, right? Why isn't he going to say, well, why am I going to go to media day, right? And we know media day for these guys is very exhausting. Like they have to answer our questions for hours when they have a tough wake out ahead. They could be in the sauna, they could be in the gym, they could just be recovering from their workout, right? Laying in bed rather than sitting on a chair with no, with no backrest and whatnot, and just talking for hours. Um, yeah, like I get it. It's tough. That's why Conor McGregor didn't want to do press and they pulled him from a card. Because it is a toll and these guys should be compensated for it. Um, I think the UFC there should have like put their foot down, and be like, nah, you're doing me today. And hey, look, if you want extra money, we'll give you extra money, but you're doing me today. Maybe, 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 maybe not individual interviews. Maybe we can even shorten that. Let's just do one big scrum. All right. You can go half the media day, but you got to give the media something. Like it's an expensive trip, man. And most media outlets went because Habib is fighting because he is a star. So yeah. So anyways, I don't correlate those two together, but nonetheless, yeah, that's how I feel about Habib not attending media day. And number one was because I went backwards there. Knocks on Connor for boxing Mayweather and calls out Mayweather. Well, Habib didn't actually fight Mayweather. And I think a lot of it was just promotion. I mean, you got freaking Jose Aldo saying he can make 135, right? Because Henry Cejudo, Triple C, is hot stuff right now. He's all over the news, right? For, obviously his achievements, also some of the comments he's made. So it is important, or it would benefit Jose Aldo to talk about him because people would write about him and keep him in the, in the news. Now, do we actually think that dude can make 135? He could barely make 145. So no, that just doesn't happen. But nonetheless, we see those kinds of things. So again, Habib calling out or saying he's going to fight Mayweather was just, I don't know. I didn't take that whole thing seriously. But again, I didn't take Conor McGregor fighting Floyd Mayweather seriously until it actually happened. So there's that. All right, so that does it for the Twitter questions. Thank you so much for everybody that contributed for the Twitter questions. It's awesome because I get to see them beforehand and get to elaborate a little more to the answers that you're looking for. So that's nice. So, anyways, I'm gonna go to the chat now and take questions from there. So it's 9. I am 30 minutes in. I think I could do this for about 15 minutes. Another water break. Oh, by the way, I just quickly want to say Atletico Madrid has been killing it, and it's been so nice. So nice. Barcelona, Real. It's just a good time to be an Atletico fan. All right. With that out of my chest, off my chest, let's get to some questions. Let's see. Eric Urias, this is not a question, this is a comment. Thanks to that notify bell, I'm here and ready. Turn on your notifications, people. They're important. And I would also appreciate the support. So thank you, Eric. Scott Kelly asks, do you think Darren Till is making a massive mistake fighting Gastelum? So I actually wanted to do an individual like reaction video to that matchup. As you guys know, I was doing just previews and recaps. And then until yesterday when Chris Cyborg was, Bellator announced that Chris Cyborg was joining the roster, I made a reaction video to that. That was my very first like news reaction video. But I actually thought about making one for Till and Gaslam, but then I got busy and I kind of missed the boat on it. So I'm glad this question was asked. By the way, Chris Cyborg subscribed to my channel and she also dropped a comment on that video, which I thought was kind of dope. But anyways, yes and no. Massive mistake in the sense of, dude, you're stepping into a new weight class. You don't know how your cardio holds up at 185, your timing, because you're carrying 15 extra pounds, maybe even more, because the cut to 170 might not allow you, because it's so drastic, it might not allow you to regain certain weight. So you might even be so the conversion is not exactly what's from 170 to 185, right? Like maybe cutting to 185, you can come in heavier, so you just cut a bunch of water weight, and then you just easily gain that back up, and then you could even be 20 pounds heavier, right? So the conversion doesn't always align. So how do you move? What's your speed like? At 185, what's your cardio like at 185? There are so many factors that to consider and that are yet to be find out until you actually step in the octagon and see what's up, that you usually want to do that with lower opposition, right? Because you need some slack, right? If you make a mistake, a guy that's not that good might not capitalize on it. But a guy like Kevin Gastelum, who is really, really, really good, he'll make you pay for that. So, in skills wise, Kelvin is obviously he's proven to be one of the very best middleweights in that division, right? So, yes, that is a mistake fighting a guy of that caliber. Let's look at his ranking real quick, just for fun. Let's see. All right, middleweight. So you got Israel Adesanya number 1, obviously interim champ. Paulo Costa number 2, Yoel Romero at number 3, and Kelvin Gastelum at number 4. So yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, you could even swap Yoel Romero and Kelvin Gastelum, and I wouldn't hate it. I mean, you could even make an argument that he beats Costa and he's really number 2, and we saw how his fight went with Israel Adesanya. So at best he could be number 2, but nonetheless, you're fighting one of the very, very best guys. So yes, that's one mistake. But on the other hand, you're also fighting one of the smaller guys of a division. You're also fighting a guy that used to be a welterweight. And that is ideal when jumping up a weight class, right? When Kevin Lee fought RDA, it's kind of like the similar situation, although I consider like Kevin Lee has proven to be more legit at this point than Darren Till. I mean, I feel like Darren Till's younger in his career. Um, but yeah, you ideally don't want to fight the biggest guy in the weight class above. You want to fight hopefully somebody that used to fight there, that used to fight your weight class, and or somebody that is there already but is smaller, right? So the jump in size is not that big of a deal. So in that sense, it's not a mistake. So there's pros and cons. He did pick a good size matchup. In fact, you could even make the argument that Till, who hasn't fought at 185 in the UFC and is coming up to test that the waters there, and fighting someone like Kelvin Gastelum, who's already a proven middleweight and has fought there several times, you could even make the argument that Darren Till might be the bigger guy come fight night. And that is an advantage, right? That's why people cut weight. So in that sense, it's not a mistake. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Like you're fighting, it's a tough matchup and it's a very, very skilled guy, but also one of the smaller guys. And look, size does make a difference. If I think I was there when Kelvin Gastelum fought Chris Weidman, and Kelvin had just moved up to 185, so he hadn't really filled up as much. He was very much closer to a welterweight than he was a middleweight. And I was looking at that fight live. That was in Long Island, so not too far from here in Brooklyn. And it was pretty clear to me that Kelvin Gastelum was the better fighter. I mean, he dropped Weidman. He did a lot of things that you'd go, okay, this guy's clearly winning. This guy's really good. But there was a big size difference there. And in wrestling, that is huge. And obviously, Chris Weidman, being the very smart fighter that he is, he took advantage of that and wrestled the hell out of Kelvin Gastelum. So, yeah. So to answer the question, what was the question exactly? Is it a mistake? It's maybe a mistake, but not a massive gamble. Again, it would only be a mistake if he loses, and we've yet to find that out. So we'll see what happens. But it's a massive gamble. And if he wins, he beats the number 4 guy. I mean, he's right there. Maybe Israel Adesanya and Robert Whitaker have a war and they have to sit out. Maybe you make Paulo Costa there until at that point. I don't know, but it is a big gamble with a big pay. So tough matchup for him, but at least he's taking one of the smaller guys, as I said. So yeah. All right, I'll move on to, let's see. Eric Urias actually comes back now with a question. You gonna play some FIFA 20? Yes, I will. I also have a Twitch account which I haven't used in a bit. If so, gotta do more FIFA streaming, my man. Thanks for the great content and your hard work. I appreciate that, Eric, very much. Thank you. Yeah, I gotta get back on Twitch, man. I'm gonna get FIFA 20. I always do. Uh, so my birthday September 17th, and FIFA always comes out late September. So I usually either tell my brother to get it for me, like pre-order it or something, as a birthday present. So I'll be doing the same thing this year. That's just a ritual by this point. Just get the new FIFA every year. I mean, it's a must. Yeah. And Atleti's looking good, as I said. So it's gonna be a fun team to play with. All right. Scott Kelly asks again, man, you're obsessed with weight classes, Scott Kelly. What do you think of Rumble at heavyweight? Dude, I've been preaching that for forever. I think yeah, I'm all for it. I mean, he looks huge. He's like a real heavyweight, not a light heavyweight looking for easy fights at heavyweight. No, he's huge, and he's a fun fighter to watch. He's got crazy knockout power, always has across weight classes, which is very bizarre. And yeah, he'd be a really really fun addition. I actually saw him fight Andre Arlovsky at like a local Florida event. I think it was or was that a World Series? It was a World Series. Yeah, World Series went to Florida, and at the time I wasn't even with MMA fighting, just like carving my way up, and that was one of the fights I got credential for, and I covered it. And watching Rumble at heavyweight, like against Andre Arlovsky, and that was also a much smaller Rumble, looked fine to me. He didn't look like he was struggling with size. So now that he's packed on some muscle, I think he would do very, very well. Yeah. Coco Butt says, "Hi, Danny. Hello." All right. Coco Butt asks if Khabib misses weight, will Paul Felder step in? Maybe. Is Tony Ferguson going? I heard something that he might be, or saw something that he might be a backup. I don't know. Yeah, knock on wood, man. Hopefully that doesn't happen because I'm dying to see Khabib versus Dustin Poirier. But I guess because Edson Barboza already. Oh, well, actually, okay, I'll tell you that right now. They usually go with the highest ranked guys. So Edson Barboza is higher ranked than Paul Felder. Paul Felder is number 10. Edson's number 7. Oh wait, no, but Edson trains with ATT with Dustin Poirier. Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I have no idea. Hopefully you didn't jinx anything there. Let's see. I'll answer a couple more. Cameron Phillips asks, "Do you think Khabib's popularity can ever reach or even eclipse Connor's?" No, no. I think Connor, like Ronda Rousey, um, he's just his own thing. He's just his own thing. I mean, Connor would just, perfect time. Not only time as far as like his development, right? Because he had to develop at a certain time to get to the places um, that he got. But also, the promotion has to get behind you, right? I mean, I feel like they are behind Habib, right? But I mean, there was a clear push. They were behind Connor, and it's very rare to see that. Especially with Connor being like he's like the poster child, especially with Connor being in the picture. Let's say if Connor would have retired, or well, he did retire, but like for real, and he didn't actually fight, like he'd be like, yeah, I'm done. Like I'm just gonna focus on my whiskey business and that's that. And like, I don't want to get punched in the face anymore. I got money. Like, who cares? Then maybe you can see like the UFC really like put on like full engine behind Khabib because I mean, it's just a matter of numbers as well, right? Right, like less resources to spread around your stars, right? Less stars. So, um, yeah, but no, I don't think Habib will ever be as popular as Connor. He's just his own thing. But nonetheless, I do think Habib could definitely reach a few more levels of popularity, especially if he beats Dustin Poirier. Especially if I know this is going to be ugly, but if they do that rematch with Connor, that's going to be huge. And again, it's just going to elevate him even more. So yeah, there's definitely levels to this, and he can get higher than he already is, which is still pretty incredible because he's already up there. Anthony also. Hey, shouts out to Anthony also. I recognize you now. You were there on. I'm starting to recognize some names now. Um, do you think Tony Ferguson will get the next shot after Dustin Poirier versus Habib, or will Conor get it? So actually, according to Dana White, and you can find this on MMAfighting.com. I'll pull it up right now. Um, Dana White did go on record to say something of that nature. Let me see. Yep, written by Damon Martin, whose birthday was, I believe, yesterday. So happy birthday to him, or the day before. I'm getting my days mixed up with this weird Abu Dhabi schedule. Um, let's see what the exact quote is here. Okay, well, I'm just like briefly grazing it, and I already know it's a little fuzzy. So he says, "This is Dana White's words, right? To talking to ESPN. Listen, again, if Tony Ferguson's ready, um, White told ESPN when asked if the former Ultimate Fighter winner will get the next shot. Tony has been offered opportunities before that, and he hasn't taken. If Tony's ready, then yeah, he's next. So that doesn't sound very convincing, but nonetheless, and okay, he's been offered other opportunities. Like, bro, he wants to fight for the belt. Other opportunities don't count. Like, he's deserved. He's done enough. Yeah, wait out, like sit out, fight, fight for the belt. You've done enough, man. Like, you don't need to prove anything else to anybody. It's pretty clear you deserve the belt years ago. So that I have no issues with. But yeah, that's a no-brainer, man. I mean, from a styles point, I think it mixes things up, and I think I'm not saying you want your champion to lose your belt, but if your champion loses your belt, that opens up for new matchups, new rematches, the rematch rivalries, etc. So competition is always a good thing. So yeah, you do want him out there. And at this point, I feel like Tony Ferguson, he might not be as big of a star as, Connor and Habib, but he's definitely up there. Like, people know who he is, man. And he's definitely carved his own entity. It's not like he's been copying people or anything. Yeah, man. Hopefully he gets it. And look, Dana White rarely nowadays goes on record to say things, but again, he's also said things and he goes a different route and changes his mind. So, this is not, I won't take that comment as complete truth, but it's definitely a good sign if you're Tony Ferguson. So hopefully that's the case. I will remain optimistic, and Anthony also, I will say yes. Tony Ferguson gets the next shot over Conor McGregor. Boom. Mike Tyson. Oh, hi, Mike Tyson. Afternoon, Danny. Thanks for the insight. You're very welcome. All right, I'll take a couple more questions, and I'm out. Well, I'm 43 minutes in. Um, I'm being asked about pro wrestling. I know nothing about pro wrestling, but I used to be a TNA fan. Like, when I was in middle school and stuff. Like, I did watch it. Um, and I went to an indie show with Mark Ramundi, like, I think earlier this year, and that was fun. That was really cool. Uh, but I wouldn't say I know things, like, about it. There was one dude that I really liked. Was it the Lucha Bros? These two guys. I forgot, but yeah, it's cool. I just don't have the time. Let's see. Bobby Knuckles asks, why is UFC having problems booking Usman versus Colby for MSG card in November? Is it possible for Kobe to get skipped again? Yeah, very, very, very possible. Yeah. So our own Jose Young's, or at our site MMA Fighting, he asked Dana White, oh yeah, we hear that some along the lines again. Something like, oh yeah. He literally like looked at the camera blankly, like Dana White, and it was just like, yeah. And then they just move to like the next question. So like we're like, okay, so that's kind of confirmed, I guess. But turns out, I think Ariel Hawani recently reported. Let me pull the tweet up so I'm not making shit up. Um, let's see. Let's see what Ariel said. So Ariel tweeted like recently, like a few hours ago. He tweeted. Let's see. As reported earlier, the Usman versus Covington fight talks. That was my phone. Um, Talks hit a snag. So the UFC turned their attention to Usman versus Masvidal, but as you can see via GameBraid's most recent tweet, they are now having issues finalizing that one. So yeah, look, I mean, remember the real reason why Colby got skipped was because he was putting certain demands. I believe also he was injured. He had like a nose problem, but nonetheless, I think there was at some point because so much has happened that he was ready, and even then he got skipped over by Usman, who eventually won the belt from Tyron Woodley. Um, you know, Colby feels a little bit entitled, and rightfully so. I mean, the guy has literally went from like just your average fighter, yes ma'am, I'll take anybody, whatever, to creating whoever he is today. And yeah, a lot of people don't like him, but nonetheless, you can't deny that's elevated his stardom, whether it's in a positive way or a negative way. Um, Clearly people are invested in him and either want to watch him get his ass whooped for the most part or win. But nonetheless, he's built a brand, and he feels like a fight with Usman, which there's so much bad blood and there's been so much buildup throughout the years. He feels like he should get paid, accordingly. And also, he was a champion at some point, and an interim champion. So, I'm sure, again, I don't have much information on this, but like probably, negotiations will probably get tough because of that, right? Um, and if it doesn't happen, what a shame, because he's really the number one contender. Say what you want about him, but the guy has earned his shot. Period. I mean, fair. What's fair is fair, right? And the man deserves his shot, and he's probably not going to get it, but or I don't know, maybe he will, but from what it sounds like, and usually Ariel's pretty on point with these things. Yeah, it looks like they're having big issues. I mean, they went to Masvidal, and Masvidal was heavily invested in that Nate Diaz fight, so like you kind of already see where things are heading. But hopefully it happens, because I think stylistically it's a fun fight, and it's the fight to make in that division, right? So yeah. Yeah, so there's a chance he might get skipped over. Hopefully not. Knock on wood. Let's see what else. It's a lot of comments here. Those are always fun to read. I believe in Dustin, writes Edson Barboza. Yeah, his own teammate, right? Edson Barboza. Here he is. Not taking any sleep in Abu Dhabi and watching this video. Um, when are you going to appear on Ariel Radio Show? Whenever he invites me. Um, Dustin hands down Khabib's toughest fight for a few reasons. Yeah. Mm, let's see. Who has he fought? Well, toughest fight isn't the people he's fought and what he's gonna fight, because he's gonna fight Poirier. I think the toughest is, um, no, I'll take that back, because like, they haven't fought, so anything can be hypothetical, right? Um, no, I think Tony Ferguson is Habib's toughest fight. I really do. I also think Justin Gaethje is a very, very compelling opponent as well. I mean, and I made this argument a long time on the MMA Hour. Like, you need to be tough as hell. Okay, yeah, you need to have a little bit of crazy in you too. You need to be tough as hell. You got to have power, right? You got to have tons of cardio. That right there sounds like just engaging. That also sounds like Dustin Poirier, but maybe a little more than just a little more just engaging. I mean, just engaging's output is just insane, and it's constant throughout 5 rounds. Like, he doesn't stop. So that's essentially what you want if you are fighting Khabib, right? Because he's gonna take you down. He's gonna wear you down, but at some point you want to be able to land that shot in that 5th round and put him away, right? That's Gagey. So, and he also has a really good wrestling background. So I think between Gagey and Tony Ferguson, those are the toughest matchups. But that doesn't mean that Dustin is not a tough matchup for Habib. I think it will be. I think it will be. Even if Dustin loses, I think he will put on a really good fight and be competitive. That's what I believe. but not gonna make an official prediction on that. So somebody asked here, would you challenge Luke Thomas in a trial by combat of Game of Thrones style in order to wife up Sofia Vergara? That's like such a silly question. But growing up, I had the biggest, and I still do, the biggest crush on Sofia Vergara. Like in Colombia, like so Colombia's very interesting because in all the notebooks that you get from school, say like you go to like your Walmart there it would be Olympica, or there's a few other supermarkets, like chain supermarkets that have come up. Like kids would get, like, I'm talking about like elementary kids, like myself, like I'd be like 10, 10 years old, 8 years old. And also a lot of teenagers would do that too, mainly teenagers. But like you could easily go to like Walmart and get like these notebooks that like you would get at the beginning of each start of school year with models on it, and Sofia Vergara was mostly on them. Natalia Paris as well, another famous Colombian model. And yeah, you don't see that usually here in the States, is like cartoons or like something, something kids would actually own. But yeah, in Colombia, it was just a bunch of hot ladies in bikini, and then you would take that to school, which was funny. But yeah, and no, as I said before, if I had to fight anybody in MMA media, Luke Thomas would be the last dude. He's huge and he's trained, so no. I mean, I mean, it depends who also you consider MMA media. Because, for example, Dan Hardy does MMA media, and he's a real fighter, right? So he's sort of like the like journalist, right? Yeah, Barca all day. Yo, Barca sucking. And bro, Griezmann, what is he doing? Barcelona has nothing with Messi. That's what they've proven this short season so far. They are screwed without Messi. They don't have much of a structure. All right. So yeah, that's it. I got one more question by Eric Urias, but I already answered a couple of those, and I kind of want to get out of here. I'm 50 minutes deep into this live chat. Um, okay, Rene W asked something, and I think he hasn't asked anything before, so I will answer that. How about that? Go 55 minutes. So Rene W asks, do you think that we will see an even better version of Khabib with his father being in his corner? Okay, so yeah, I kind of already answered that. No, I feel like Khabib is someone that's very good at just sticking to his game plan and being who he is. We saw that in the Conor McGregor fight, as I said earlier. Like there was so much bad blood there, and he stuck to his game plan. He did what he did, and yeah, there might have been a little more, a little extra. Take this, but nonetheless, it was a vintage performance by Khabib. I mean, we did not see the man change for any outside factor, right? Obviously, now this is a much different outside factor. It's not somebody he hates, but somebody he loves and feels supported by, and is a big influence in his life. Obviously, his dad. But yeah, I don't suspect Khabib will fight any different. He'll be vintage Khabib. Yep. So, anyways, that's all I got. That is the very end. This is the very end of the UFC 242 preview live chat. I don't even have an official name for these things. But man, these are fun. I really enjoyed answering your questions. So thank you so much for to everybody that participated, because without your questions, this isn't possible. And not only for your questions, but I also read very nice things that I don't always read on the chat. But um, yeah, like I appreciate everybody's support. It's means the world to me, and these are fun, man. And I look forward to continuing to doing these things. And again, these things are not possible without you. So thank you very much. So yeah, enjoy UFC 242. I believe the main card. I'm gonna be up at like 7 or 6:30. I believe the main card starts like at 8, or the card starts at 8 or something like that. Um, let me just clarify that, just to leave you guys with the time, so you guys know what time to wake up. So the main card starts at 2 p.m. Eastern time. The early prelims start at, oh no, I got that completely wrong. 10:15 a.m. Eastern. So not bad. So I enjoy my fights with a good cup of coffee in the morning. Why not? So yeah, enjoy the fights this weekend. Have fun. Do something fun in your Saturday night. And yeah, that's all I got. Again, thank you guys so much. Later.